You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio. Alrighty, let's make sure that the visual is showing. Alrighty, bear with me, folks. Here we go. Here we go. Voila. All right. For some reason, the background overlay isn't working properly, so we'll just go through without it. Appreciate you joining up on this podcast. My name is Levi. I am the host of The Forefront Radio. The Forefront Radio talks about Black history according to the Bible. We're going to have a very interesting discussion today, talking about a few things that have happened in the recent news. And I have a special guest with me today. She's done a few podcasts with me before, but many of you may not be familiar with her. So we're going to introduce her onto the show. We're going to talk about a few things and, get the show started and everything. So let's go ahead and invite Miss Jen. She is the host of a wonderful podcast called Woke by Accident. Woke by Accident is an excellent show talking about social issues, social justice things, just interviewing so many people. Hi, Jen. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. How are you today, Levi?
Doing good. Can't complain. Always a pleasure to see you, sis. Big ups. Thank you for joining me up on the show and everything. I appreciate you. So tell me about Woke by Accident.
Yeah, so Woke by Accident podcast. It's a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. And so we just celebrated casting, so I'm happy about that. And yeah, I was inspired to start the podcast after the events of the George Floyd death and incident um, around the same time, which was May 2020. The Mike Brown case was reopened. People may be familiar with the Mike Brown case from back in August of 2014. Well, they reopened that case in May of 2020. And so his parents were hoping to get justice then, and they kind of did an investigation all over again. And so those events kind of spearheaded my interest in wanting to have a voice and a platform to talk about these issues. We keep seeing these police matters, police shootings over and over again. And I know people in my circle, we, are upset and we have things to say. We want to share about these things. And so I wanted to get those out. And I saw an opportunity to start a podcast. And so I learned up on how to do a podcast. I took a course online and I started the podcast. So I'm keeping it rolling and I'm really happy about it.
So you saw the events happening, because a lot of times when you talk about podcasts, and especially right now amongst our community, I see a lot of podcasts going into like relationships and general topics, gossip, but not that many podcasts talk about these social justice issues. So what makes Woke by Accident so unique?
For sure. And so that was one of the things I knew that I wanted to talk about those issues. So that part, I didn't have, any question about. It was just a matter of, what microphone do I get and how do I edit this thing and how do I, which platform do I sign up for and things like that. And so I was really happy to get involved with a podcasting course called Idea to Launch with Carla Ramirez, who's a really good podcasting resource in the space. I still work with her from time to time for coaching opportunities and learned about those things. And so shared with her that I wanted to talk about these things and just formulated how I would do the podcast. But I knew that I wanted to talk about these things just personally was affected by these cases. The Mike Brown situation, really close to home, being from St. Louis. Ferguson is a suburb here, really like essentially in my backyard, with the way the suburbs in St. Louis work. And everyone was just so affected by that case and wanting that family to have justice. And then seeing so many families going through the same type of matter, we needed a platform, I felt, to share these things. And even though it's on the news and it's online, a lot of people, tune those out. They don't want to hear about those kind of things. So I felt like my platform is needed and is unique, and feel like it was right on time. So with the climate of what was going on, the whole Black Lives Matter, um, you know, movement was going on around the same time, even though that has kind of went on a different roller coaster ride, if you will. But yeah, I definitely feel like I have a unique voice and it's needed. These occurrences keep coming up. So yeah, definitely glad I have a platform to share.
As a fellow podcaster, I really appreciate seeing others that talk about these type of things because I touch on some of these things as well from a biblical perspective. How do we meet, Jen? Remind me, how did I come across you?
You know what? I heard you speaking in a room on Clubhouse. I think you have your own club, and I think you had a room. I may have popped in, or you may have been in someone else's room. It's been a minute, and I was just heard you talking about whatever the issues were, and I reached out to you and just said, "Oh, hey, would you like to have a conversation?" I heard you speaking in whichever room, and had you on my podcast initially, and then you ended up being on so many more after that. And then start introducing you to some other folks, and it just kind of, it's really kind of funny how that
Yeah,
works.
let's talk about that real quick. You like basically recruited me, right?
It's kind of
It
funny.
was great. It was great. You recruited me for content creators of color. Tell me about how we ended up getting involved with that.
Yeah, and so had worked with you on our podcast. I had to dig that up now. That's going to bother me. The very first one that I had you on, and so and I think we had a couple after that initial one. And then I had met some of the folks there, Sean Connors and Daryl and such, and we would just run into each other in these different podcasting rooms on the social media site Clubhouse. A lot of people go on there for gossip and things like that. But a lot of us are, we go in there to kind of network with other podcasters and learn about the craft and things. And so I would just, bump into them in the same rooms. And sometimes when we would have a minute to kind of talk to each other, when there wasn't a speaker on the stage, or like, oh, we ought to do something together. And maybe I would be on their podcast or they would be on my podcast. And then one of the guys had the idea, like, hey, we should all come together and do something. And so there was the idea birthed to do a collective of these group of podcasters that met on Clubhouse. And so I ended up being a part of that, and we were thinking, oh, who else can we get? Who else, who would be down? Who would be down? And so I was like, oh, I might know a guy, And so, and so you were that guy. And so I reached out to you. Just, I mean, I didn't even know if like, who
Oh
are these
yeah, I
people?
jumped on that thing. I didn't even know what was going on, but it was hilarious because it was like, "Hey, do you want to join?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" But then it
Okay.
became a wonderful collective. I was so amazed, and as far as like the different types of podcasters that
Hmm.
was out there, and being fairly new because I started in 2020 as well.
Yeah.
Being fairly new, I was like not really familiar with all the different genres that was out there, but
Hmm.
definitely it was excellent. We started it in October of 2021. That was season
Yeah.
one, right? And then we
Yeah, it
did
was.
season two this year in February of 2022. So for the listeners, whenever you get an opportunity to check it out, please do look up Content Creators of Color. Content Creators of Color, C4 Challenge on either Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you'll be able to check this out. All right.
Yeah. And there's a website also, if you can remember, c4challenge.com. Everything is gathered up nice in a bow on c4challenge.com.
Yes, thank you. Let me go ahead and type that in the comment section, www.c4challenge.com. So you would go to that particular site, and that will enable you to be able to see some of the content. Okay. All right. So moving forward, we're going to go into some of the articles that we have to discuss today. We have a lot of important news stories of social situations that occurred amongst our people. But prior to that, I want to give a caveat. Since on the Forefront Radio, we always use the Bible to talk about various social issues that we see in the world, I want to make sure that we use the Bible to give the premise of where we're coming from. And then afterwards, we'll get into commentary and things of that nature. So what I'll do first, I'll share my screen and we'll go over a particular Bible verse going into the topic for today. And this can be found first in Mark chapter 7, and verse 21. Mark chapter 7 and verse 21. It says, "For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts." So that's what we're going to go into today. How many of these news articles show the amount of violence, atrocities, and just unspeakable things that you wouldn't even think would happen. And it gives example of some of these things that proceed out of the thoughts of men. Okay. In living in this reality, we have to keep people from living in la la land, because you have so much distractions from the media that causes people to want to do foolishness. They rather dance and party and live it up, but they don't see the reality of what's happening in society. It says, let's read it again. "For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts." And then it gives examples. Adulteries, that's an evil thought. Fornications, that's an evil thought. Murders, that's an evil thought. All these thoughts come into the man, and it becomes an action. Okay. So now there's nothing new under the sun. The same thing that happens today happened back then during the antediluvian period. So during the time of Noah, these same things were occurring. So now let's read that. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, it says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." You see that? So even back then, the reason why the Most High God had to flood the entire earth was because the wickedness of man was so great that every single thought that he was doing was violence, murder, rape, robbery, invading other people's lands, stealing women, children, plundering, spoiling. Okay. It got so bad that the creator had to say, you know what? I'm done with this. I can't deal with y'all. We're going to have to, throw some water and cleanse this place. Okay. Such is the same case for today. Such is the same case for today. So what we're going to get into, we're going to go ahead and discuss the first article. Okay. So go ahead, Jen. I'm going to have you present the first article that we're going to go into, and then we'll look at some scriptures related to this article.
Yeah, so the first story that we were going to touch on was about this Alabama shooting that just occurred last week. A 70-year-old man has been charged in the Vestavia Hills church shooting that killed three. So let's see here. Avestivia Hillsman is now formally charged with capital murder and the shooting deaths of a man and two women during a church potluck supper Thursday night. Robert Finley Smith is charged in the slayings of Walter Rainey, who was 84, Sarah Yeager, who was 75, and Jane Pounds, who was 84. The charge against Smith is capital because two or more people were killed in the shooting, and he was booked in the Jefferson County Jail Thursday. So, I know initially there weren't so many details, but now we have, pictures and so on. Yeah. So
So this is the
initial.
suspect right here,
Mhm.
okay, on the screen. This is the murderer, okay? And I want to put his face on the screen for everyone to look at the face of domestic terrorism, okay? The face of murder. Remember what we just read in Genesis chapter 6, right? That God saw that the wickedness of man was so great on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So now, think about this, Jen. When we were going into the article, I read that this individual that we see on the screen here, this individual walked into a church. The people actually invited him into their potluck, right? They said, "Have a seat. Hey, how you doing? My name is such and such. Who are you?" He says, "My name is Mr. Smith." "Okay, hi, Mr. Smith. Would you like to come and sit with us? Chat, blah, blah, blah." He just sat to himself. Then, as we read along in the article, you're going to find out what this demon did, right? He
Right.
goes and does what, Jen?
Well, he committed a horrible, heinous act, and he took the lives of three people here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Pulled out a handgun and then fired upon innocent people. Okay. You can see some of the photos that we have in the article here provided by al.com/news. It says police search the Sicard Hollow Road, uh, the Sicard Hollow Road home, Robert Finley Smith on Friday. So this is the name of the character, Robert Finley Smith. So now going back to his picture, you see how he has this black eye all over his face, right?
Yeah.
The people that was there understood the situation and they bust him outside of the head with a chair. And rightfully
Oh,
so.
okay. Hmm.
Rightfully so. That's why he has this wound on his face. Because a lot of times people live in la la land and they think that nobody is not going to do anything. We live in a land of the free, home of the brave, so we should have some sort of safety. No, we read in the Bible that every thought and imaginations of man will be evil continually. This is the man that walked into a church, okay, and fired upon innocent people. Now, keep that in mind now. When we did a story about Dylan Roof a couple of
Hmm.
months back, and we made the comparison between Dylan Roof, domestic terrorism, how all these different groups work together and they have the same mindset: murder, kill, mayhem. Okay.
Yeah.
And while we were discussing this show, if you recall, we made the correlation between how he didn't care about so-called Christian values. He didn't care about anything biblical based. He just wanted to do his own thing. But remember, whenever you read the Bible, even in the 10 Commandments, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." That's going into murdering people of your own volition. Okay? You see what I'm saying? We had a
Yeah.
comment right here by Miss Ruby. I'm going to show the comment. She said, "Oh, wow." She said, "Oh, wow. The old ones are doing it now." Exactly. So you have people, it doesn't matter what age they are,
That's true.
from young to old, that are going on and assassinating people. This is the face of domestic terrorism. Okay. So let's go back to the article. And Jen, if you may, let's go ahead and read on.
Let's see. So I kind of had the little highlights there. So, okay. So the district attorney announced the warrants. They expressed their condolences to the victims. Now, Smith is being described as the lone suspect. So I guess they're saying no other parties were involved. He was taken into custody Friday. Let's see. He was held in the Vestavia Hills City Jail overnight. He'll be transferred to Jefferson County, but he'll be held without bond. He lives in the Curhaba Heights, and the police blocked off the roadway Friday afternoon where they carried out the search warrant. And so, public records, this is interesting that they show that he is ATF licensed firearms dealer.
So let's
With
touch on that real
wow,
quick.
okay, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
touch on that real quick. So now, ATF, this is a federal, right, system, right?
Yeah, alcohol, tobacco, firearm, yeah.
Okay, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. This is a government agent. In order for you to be able to sell legally firearms as a dealer under the ATF, that means you had to do training. That means you had
Mm-hmm.
to take classes. That means you had to pass tests. That means you had to go through a background check. So now, who has done a background check on the so-called Caucasian people? Now we know, based on their background, that when Christopher Columbus came over here, it wasn't voting. There wasn't any people having a town hall meeting. He came and slaughtered people and committed acts of genocide. When you think of mass murder, when you think of serial killers, you're not thinking of a Mexican. You're not thinking of a black man. You're not thinking of a Chinese person. This is the face of genociders. This guy right here. Good old Mr. Chuck downstairs, Mr. Smith. Oh, he seemed kind of nice. He seemed like a nice guy. We used to go out for drinks. We used to hang out. Oh, he was an ATF government agent, but so what? But then when you read on, you find out what? That this guy has a history, right, of a DUI. Okay, so not only is he a drunkard, I mean, if this guy is a drunkard and has an arrest record for a DUI, would he be a likely candidate to sell guns to people?
But that's not one of the, things that that's not one of the criteria, I guess. So,
You see that?
you're right.
So that goes to show you that we live in a society that is just like how the Bible says. Think about this. In a developed nation such as the United States, right? The United States manufactures more guns than any other place on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
The United States is the one that created the NRA. They have the ATF. They have the DEA. They have military now that are armed with military grade weapons, and we call them the police. Why does the police need a tank? Why do the police need drones? You see what I'm saying? Why do they need these things? Are they a
Yeah.
requirement or do they want them? So this government agent, okay, going back to this dude, this government agent literally went in and shot innocent women, children, shot at people. And unfortunately, no children died, but what ended up happening was 3 people ended up being harmed. And the names of the victims, of course, in the slang was Walter Rainey, Sarah Yeager, Pelham of Jane Pounds, 84 of Hoover. Okay, so that's enough on that article.
Yeah.
Let me touch briefly on a few scriptures related to this subject, because a lot of times when we go over these things, people think it's a one-off situation where they say, oh no, it's a lone wolf. We've covered that before, lone wolf, right? But we know that there's a lot of people that commit acts of genocide and serial killers that are out there. Majority of them are not black folk. Okay, we'll just put
Mhm.
it out there like that. So I'm not
Right.
saying that all white folks are domestic terrorists, but when you look at serial killers, majority of them are white folks. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna put it out there like that. But now they're not called white in the Bible. They're called Esau in the Bible. So let's go over to the Bible and let's look at how the Bible examines the group known as Esau. Let's go to it real quick. I'll share again the screen. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 25 and verse 25. Let's read that briefly. Genesis chapter 25 and verse 25. So please read along with me right here. Okay, actually, let's start up a little bit. We're going to start up at verse 21. Okay, it says, "And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and of Rebekah his wife conceived." So, our foremother, named Rebekah, wasn't able to have kids. She was barren. She was sterile at the moment, right? And Isaac prayed and entreated the Most High for his wife. He said, "Look, I have this beautiful wife here, but I don't have any heirs. I don't have any descendants." And the Most High said, "Okay, I got you. My son, I got you. I'm going to allow her to get pregnant." So she ended up being able to conceive. Verse 22, "And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord." So she's like, I got these twins in my belly, and these kids are fighting. Remember, the book of Genesis is the beginning of all nations. Genesis means Bereshit, which means beginning. That's why you read, "In the beginning, God created such and such and such," right? The heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, right?
Yes.
So we're reading the beginning of a unique nation on the earth. Because when Adam was on the scene, Adam, believe it or not, is a black man. Eve is a black man. Let's prove that real quick. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 7. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. And it says, "And the Lord God formed man," this is referring to Adam and all humanity, "and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the earth, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So now the dust of the earth is different gradations of brown, different shades of brown. So now the way I know this to be true is when you look at the tribe of Judah, which is the tribe of our ancestors, right? It gives a description of the same tribe that Jesus the Christ came from. Let's look at it briefly. Jeremiah chapter 14 and verse 2. It says, "Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish." So we're looking at the characteristics of the tribe of Judah.
Mhm.
They are black, they are black unto the ground. Now, Jen, doesn't that sound like what we just read in Genesis, where it says, God made man of the dust of the ground?
Yes.
So, what we're doing is correlating and cross referencing different scriptures to verify our point. This
Mhm.
shows you that when mankind was created, they were all different shades of brown. But now, when you jump to Genesis 25, a couple of centuries after Adam, you have Abraham, you have Isaac. Isaac marries Rebekah, and she starts to conceive and have children. And now we're going to see the birth of two different cultures, two separate races. Let's look at it. Genesis chapter 25, we're going to start again at 21. "And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord." So she's asking the Most High. She said, "Look, I'm having babies. I'm pregnant. They're fighting amongst each other. I thought this was a blessing. What's going on?" So the angel of the Lord comes and talks to her and says this. And the Lord said unto the verse 23. This is Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. And the Lord said unto her, two nations, two nations. So now when you think of nation, nation means races. Nations means
Mhm.
nationality. Nation means groups of people. So it says two nations are in your womb, and
Okay.
two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. So now consider this, Jen. When it says two manner of people, what do you think that means? Two
Does that mean
manner of people.
like men and women or just no?
So what that means is two different types, different mannerisms,
Okay.
different styles of how they conduct themselves, differences of speech, differences of appearance, differences of culture, different completely altogether. You see that? So
Okay.
it says two manner, meaning two different forms of people shall be separated from thy bowels. This shows you that when children are born, right, they can either come out as identical twins, meaning they look alike,
Right.
or fraternal twins.
Right.
Fraternal twins. So this Bible verse is saying that two fraternal twins are going to be brought forth, and these two fraternal twins are going to be two different groups of people, two different nationalities, two different races. So now let's read on. It says, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So now we're going to look at the description of the first child. Watch this. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. So now consider this, folks, for the listeners that are watching this thing. Let's type Esau red in Google or red baby. Let's type red baby and see what comes forth. Red baby. All right. You see that? Now, look at the comparison right here in this picture between this picture right here as it comes up. Look at the difference between the skin tone of this lady that's servicing this child. Okay, here's a picture right here, and the baby itself. Do you see how red this baby is? I'm not
That's the
sure if you could see it.
blood.
Right, exactly. So now, this child is called red because the blood shows forth through his skin. The blood shows forth through his skin. Okay, so now there's no such thing as white. There's no such race as white. They never existed prior to the 1300s or so. So now look at this picture. You have the baby's face, and then the baby has white clothing on. This shows you that the color white is not the actual complexion of the child. Remember, we're reading the book of Genesis. This is the first instance of a new culture, a new race, because prior to that, all the people, including Adam going down, were all different shades of brown. So now let's continue reading. Genesis chapter 25, verse 25. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and they call his name Jacob. So now, Jacob is the forefather of the Israelites. Blacks, Native Americans, and indigenous populations
Hmm.
of the earth that we call Indians, Hispanics, Latinos. This means he is our ancestor. Okay, He is the forefather of so-called African Americans. His name, Jacob, was changed to Israel. So now when we go back and read, it says that the older one is going to come out first. That was Esau. That was the birth of the Caucasian races. So Esau is the forefather of the Greco-Roman Empire, the Caucasian Romans, the Caucasian Greeks, the Caucasian French, Spanish, English, Dutch, and all the other Caucasian groups on the planet. Okay. Why is this important? It's important as we relate to the Bible because the Bible actually talks about the history of our people as well as the culture of Esau. So now what we're going to do relating to this topic and how it coincides with what we just read as far as every thought of the imagination of the thoughts of man is evil continually, we're going to go to the book of Obadiah and look at something in regards to Esau. Watch this. Obadiah chapter 1 verse 6 says this: how are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? Meaning what? Many people don't know that Esau is the forefather of the Caucasian races. Many people have read the Bible, but they can't identify the different nationalities that are in this Bible. So now when you read about Esau and the Roman Empire and the Greeks, they like to put out in history that they're the dawn of civilization, the dawn of everything that's good and pure, right? But then when you actually read about their history, you find out that evils are multiplied on the earth. Watch this. Let's go to Malachi chapter 1, and we're going to read verse 4. Watch this. Malachi chapter 1, we're going to start at verse 1, and then we're going to jump down. Malachi chapter 1, verse 1. The burden of the Lord, which to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, wherein has he loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob. So remember, God said he loves you, Jacob, the children of Israel, blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. And then it says, and I hated Esau and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. This is how you know that God is a black man, because only black folks talk like this. He says, look, when you look at the Caucasian races, right, they're going to be at a period of time where they're impoverished. This was known as the Dark Ages, when Black Jews and Black Moors were ruling over Spain, Portugal, Europe, Russia, and all the earth was in subjection under us. And then Edom, the Caucasian races or the Europeans, came back into power during a time period where they took over the Roman Catholic Church and instituted the Renaissance. The Renaissance was when they started to rebuild their desolate places. But then it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, meaning the Lord of armies. They shall build, but I will throw down. And they shall call them, not the individual, not the person, not singular, they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord have indignation, meaning anger, forever. So now, when you look at a border, right? Let's think of a gate. Let's say you're traveling, you're purchasing a new home, you're trying to get something set up, and you set up a gate so no one will come into your property, right? So your border is your gate. The beginning of your home starts at the beginning of your gate. The end of your home ends at the end of your gate. So the Bible is saying that when the Edomites came into power, when the Greeks came into power, they are the beginning and the end of all wickedness on the earth. What are we reading? The Bible. It says the border or the gates or the leaders of wickedness. And God is mad. So now think about it like this. The Bible is like a script. Whenever you have a movie script, you have a protagonist and you have an antagonist. So in the Bible, we were created as a nation of people to be the protagonists, the heroes. Through our bloodline, you have Jesus the Christ, the Black Messiah, and all the prophets of the earth. Moses was a black man. Jesus was a black man. Joshua is a black man. Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Malachi, all these individuals that you read about in the Bible are black people. Okay, they're the heroes. So now the antagonist or the villain are the Edomites, the Greco-Roman Empire. This is a script. We're just following what the script says. So now watch this. We're going to go to a Bible verse in the Apocrypha to prove this point. Let me go to, I don't think this one has the Apocrypha in it. Let me see if it does. One second. King James, let me type King James Apocrypha. Let's see if it has the book of Maccabees in it real quick. Here it is. So it does have it. We're going to go to the book of First Maccabees, and we're going to look at the beginning of the Greeks. All of this is going to tie into the first article that we just read, okay, about that individual that we saw. When I said this is the face of domestic terrorism, that's what we're going to prove right now. Watch this. In the first section, it says, and it happened after Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian. The Macedonians are the Greeks. The Macedonians are the Edomites, okay? It says, who came out of the land of Chittim. That's the areas of Rome and the Mediterranean. It says, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. You see that? So we call him Alexander the Great, but many people don't know that he was written about in the Bible. So now let's find out, when the Caucasian races came into power, was it peace and love? Was it tranquility? Was it democracy? Was it a great republic? What did they do? Let's find out. It says, verse 2, and made many wars, and made many wars, and destroyed many strongholds, and slew, that means destroyed, slain, killed, the kings of the earth. So now, is that a democracy or is that a dictatorship? Is that a protagonist or is that an antagonist? Definitely an antagonist. That's the bad guy. We're reading about the bad guy. So now let's find out this. So now they tell us in history, right, that when Alexander the Greek came into power, right, that it was the dawn of Western civilization, beauty, opulence, and all of these things. But let's see what the Bible actually says about them. Watch this. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1 and 9. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils and evils and evils were multiplied on the earth. I know this looks confusing because it's the Old English, so we'll switch it to standard King James Version. But basically it's saying that evils, here it is right here. Let's read it one more time. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils were multiplied on the earth. So now we're tying it back to what we read in Genesis and what we read at the very beginning of the show, that every thought of the imaginations of man's heart was evil continually. So now we have a nation on the earth right now that has created mass weapons. They have created pistols. They have created firearms. They have created guns. They have created, what else? Nuclear weapons. They have created biological weapons. They have created all these things that have not benefited mankind, but has caused devastation, destruction, and genocide. Remember what we read earlier. How are the hidden things of Esau searched out? So that's it on the first part of the article. Jen, if you would, I would gladly ask if we could go now into the second article, which is the situation that happened with our beloved sister that passed away, named Felicia Johnson. If you would go into that briefly.
Yes, and so there has been a very sad update in the disappearance. Previously, we had covered a story about Felicia Johnson being missing, and so they have confirmed that police are searching for a man they alleged murdered and dismembered a California woman who was reported missing earlier this year, according to the Houston police. And I am going to say, try to pronounce his name, Chuabuka Nubo Nobono, who is 28. He's currently on the run as he faces charges of murder and tampering with evidence in connection to the alleged killing of the 24-year-old Felicia Johnson. Police say that Johnson was visiting Houston from her hometown of San Diego in search of work. While in Houston, she applied for a job at a local strip club, and Johnson was reported missing in April after her bloody cell phone and purse were discovered near a community park. Now, the body was not found, but I want to see, this was some really important details here. Johnson and this Chiwabuko had made contact on Snapchat, and it was noted that he had agreed to pay her $500 for an in person meeting. And Johnson was picked up from it by an Uber driver in the early morning hour of April 16th, and then she was driven to the suspect's previous residence, and then from there he picked her up and drove her to his current address where the authorities believe there is where she was murdered. According to the news outlet, the alleged suspect purchased a saw, trash bags, towels, a flashlight following her disappearance, latex gloves, a kitchen knife, a shovel were reportedly turned up during a search of the suspect's car, in addition to her blood, Johnson's blood, being in the trunk of his car and back seat. So her blood was also found in his apartment, and the search of the suspect's internet records found that he had Googled how to be a serial killer. How does one plan a murder without getting caught? I think he Googled some other things too. And so he was, and this is another interesting thing. He was initially arrested on May 13th in connection to the disappearance, but he was later released. So they're still trying to locate him for these charges. So anyone who has information, they are urged to contact the Houston Police Department um, or Crime Stoppers because he is still not in custody, but they know who they're looking for.
So we covered this episode on a previous, we covered this article on a previous discussion that we had pertaining to this young lady, and we are sincerely praying for her father, who was in search of her. On the last article, we touched on how the father was searching for this young lady, and our thoughts and prayers go to him and his family while they're dealing with this gruesome situation. What are your thoughts on this particular topic?
Yeah, I'm very saddened to hear that what has happened to her, and especially since they don't have a body. And I know for a lot of people that is closure when they have a body, but I'm glad from a perspective of getting justice, they have, blood and, that type of thing, and they know who they're looking for, so that they can, you know, take him into custody once he is located. But it's sad, and I kind of look back to our episode when we kind of closed it out as to, looking at things that were red flags or concerns in her travel from California to Houston, and just wish that, it could have went a different way for her. Being alone in a different city and things like that, reaching out to someone on a social media app like Snapchat who you don't know, and meeting up with them alone, just things that are really not good decisions. But being a young person, a lot of young people, we do things that are not the best decisions, but I just really saddened for the family, and just really hope that no one else goes, has this fate, this thinking like, how can we prevent this happening again? It's kind of like where in my mind is thinking too.
So, coming from a biblical perspective, the Bible has solutions for the issues that we face in our communities. And it's vital for us to understand the importance of really, truly following the laws of the Creator, following the laws of the Most High. Because unfortunately, if we decide not to do these things,
Mhm.
we'll end up causing more harm than good. Simple things like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not envy or hate thy brother in thy heart. These different things were rules and guidelines for our society. So now you know what irritates me about this story?
What's
All of
that?
this could have been prevented.
Mm.
All of this could have been prevented. So now what I'll do, because remember, how old is this young lady? She's in her 20s.
Yes.
She still barely just got out of graduating from school. She could have had her whole lifetime ahead of her, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, due to the wickedness in the hearts and thoughts of people, we see that evils are multiplied on this earth. So now we're going to look at a thing that the Bible prophesied before before this world got to the state that it was in. We're going to look at a particular verse that God talked about in the book of Hosea. Let's look at that briefly. We're looking at the book of Hosea. We're going to read chapter 4. Let's go into this briefly. It says, hear the word of the Lord. This is God talking, ye children of Israel. So he's speaking about us now. We know of the wickedness that the Caucasian races have done, but now he's going into the evils that his own kids do. Ye children of Israel, for the Lord has a controversy with the with the inhabitants of the land. So the Most High is saying, look, I got a problem with y'all. This is the reason we went into slavery. This is the core reason why we went into slavery, disobedience to his laws. He said, I got a controversy with the inhabitants of the land because there is no truth, no mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. When you look at us as a nation of people, we don't know our identity. We don't know that our identity stems from the biblical passages of the Bible. I'll give you a perfect example. When you read the book of Genesis, the very beginning of the Bible, the first 2 chapters, right? It talks about a river that flows all the way in Ethiopia. Where's Ethiopia?
Africa.
Exactly. Africa. Ethiopia is in the continent of Africa. For those of you that are not familiar with geography, I'm just going to type Ethiopia real quick, and we're going to look it up real quick on Wikipedia. Okay. It says, real quick, All right, here we go. Ethiopia is officially the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, sometimes known as Abyssinia. Is a landlocked country in the Horn of Africa. In the Horn of Africa. So it's in areas like Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan. All these regions are in the continent of Africa. And here is the location right here. So when you read in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, it says that there was a river that flowed all the way from Ethiopia, which is in Africa, up into Mesopotamia, into the Euphrates. This region, known as the Fertile Crescent, all the way down into Africa, is where our ancestors lived. It's really that easy. But we've been brainwashed in American society that when we read the Bible, we think, oh, that's a white man's book. No, it's not. So now let's go back to Hosea chapter 4, and we're going to read Hosea chapter 4, and we're going to look at verse 4. No, actually, we're going to read verse 1 again. It says, "Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord have a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land." So now he's going to specify what exactly people are doing that are against his knowledge. Because when you read further down, right here, it says in verse 6, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I also will reject thee." God rejected us by allowing us to go into slavery. God rejected us by forcing us out of our land because we broke his commandments. The commandments of God are his knowledge. Meaning what? Everybody in church talks about generational curses, right? You have pastors such as T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar. All of these has touched on generational trauma, generational curses. You even have psychologists, life coaches that get into talking about generational trauma and generational curses, but they never specify what those curses are and why we suffer from these generational trauma and generational curses. I'm going to tell you why. We had a covenant with the creator of all things. We were the ones on Mount Sinai, and he gave us laws, statutes, and commandments, rules, guidelines of how we should rule as a nation of people. Some of those guidelines included don't steal, don't kill, don't commit murder, don't lie. This was our Constitution. So now, because we broke these things, God allowed us to go into captivity. Watch this. Let's read. It says, "Hear ye the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel, for the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge," meaning they're not keeping God's laws, "in the land." You see that? Then it says, "By swearing," that's those that are bearing false witness, those that are lying, those that are gossiping. Consider the fact that we have TV shows, movies, articles, magazines dedicated to gossip. You see that? We're still doing the foolishness back then today.
Yeah.
What are a few examples of just gossip talk shows that you know of, Jen?
Like a talk show.
Mm-hmm.
So you have they didn't turn TMZ into a show, and
Mm-hmm.
they run up and down the streets chasing celebrities and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got TMZ. Okay, what else? What are some other examples of gossip talk shows or gossip radio shows? You got radio shows, you got magazines, you got all of these different things, right?
Yeah. They So your popular, Ricky Smiley
There
and,
we go.
you
Ricky
know,
Smiley show. That's gossip,
a
right? What
popular
else?
one. Um, I love the Breakfast Club, but they get into that a lot. I mean, they actually,
Breakfast Club is notorious for that
yeah,
one.
they have a
We know
special
about Breakfast
segment for
Club.
that.
Okay, what else? What else?
Yeah. And I guess Steve Harvey touches on it a bit.
Oh man, Steve Harvey, definitely.
We don't have
Steve
him
Harvey
here
is the epitome of
anymore.
that.
Yeah.
hmm
So,
So you see that a lot of our TV shows that we have, the Steve Harvey Show, the Shade Room. Okay, think about it.
yeah.
The Shade Room. Growing up, we know that throwing shade is when you talking smack about somebody, right? So there's an entire genre dedicated to lying, smear campaigns, gossip, joking around, swearing. They use a lot of profanity in these shows, do they not? Right? They're swearing, they're
Okay.
lying, they're gossiping. What are we reading? We're reading the Bible. It says
Mm,
by swearing and lying. So now it says and killing and stealing. So think about that. During Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating hurricanes that happened in the region of Louisiana, New Orleans, right?
right.
Our people were impacted the most. And instead of, you had a few groups that were helping one another and doing great things, right? But I remember I used to do research on Katrina, right? And you had people in the store looting during a natural disaster. So
I
now
feel yeah.
they weren't going in the grocery stores trying to loot food. I could understand that. They were in the
Mm,
Foot Locker. They were in the jewelry
mm.
store. Okay? I saw a video of a Caucasian man walking up to a black cop and asking her, "Hey, you see a lot of looters there. What are you going? What are you doing?" She's like, "Helping to stop looters." "Oh, helping to stop looters?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he asked her, "Why do you have a grocery cart?" And then she walked away. I was like, "What the?"
Wait a minute. Who had a grocery cart?
The police officer.
Oh, Lord.
Exactly. The
Wait.
police officer had a grocery cart in the store while people were looting right in front of the cop.
Mm,
So the Bible is a true book. Every thought, every imagination of the thoughts of man are evil continually. We're living in the times just like Noah. So it says, I got a problem with y'all. I got a controversy with the children of Israel. It says, by swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, that's going into sexual deviation, sexual sins. They break out and blood toucheth blood, which is why we see the situation that happened to our young sister,
mm,
because our young daughters that should be princesses, that should be taught the ways of the Most High, nowadays, they're being taught how to be a thotty, a bad bee, a video vixen. They are taught now to become what the Bible calls harlots, whores. Now, watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17. I know it's harsh, but the Bible is a true book. And these are the things, because you just mentioned, what can we do to change this situation? Watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. So God in the Bible himself is saying, look, in the land that you were brought to in captivity, your original purpose wasn't supposed to be a prostitute, a sex worker, a stripper, because that's where they found that young woman. That is where they found that young woman. Let's read it again. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. So the same thing with our daughters are now happening with our men now. You have men like Nas X, that are pushing the sodomite agenda. You have music videos pushing the sodomite agenda. The Bible is a true book. This was written thousands of years before we could see the fruits of it today. So, how do we fix it? We must restore our people out of the decayed state that they're in. We have to help them to get their minds right. We have to assist them in changing their ways. No longer should our sisters see themselves only by their physical appearance, but look upon themselves as princesses and daughters of the Most High God, daughters of Israel. I got a small child, a young daughter. And when I grow her up, I'm gonna tell her, baby, I'm gonna dress you up like a princess. You're gonna walk around like you got a wedding dress all the time with a nice garment and everything. And I'm going to make sure in her mind, she knows that she is royalty. You don't got to shake your booty in a club. You don't have to go work in a strip club. I'm going to cultivate you where you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a good wife, someone that is supporting of the children and still holding it down. And the same for my sons. My sons, I tell them, you're not going to go after these strange women that have no self-control. You're not going to be a man chasing after skirts, okay? Like that wicked dude, what's his name? The little African name he got? No, Nowadombo or something like that. I can't remember what
Oh
his name
yeah.
was. Nwodo. I'll just say Nwodo for short.
Mm-hmm.
That wicked man should have been taught not to chase after women, not to use money to procure sexual attention.
Right.
This is the land of confusion, Babylon the Great. If it was the land of freedom and prosperity for all and a godly, righteous society, you would not have these saloons, these sex work places, these prostitution rings, these strip clubs. All these things would not exist if this was a godly nation like they claim. They say America's a so-called Christian nation, right? But they don't follow anything that this Bible says. You see that? So some of the solutions of what we can do to help our sisters get out of this is tell them, look, as our children, you're not going to be out there shaking your butt in a club. You're not going to be listening to the music that promotes this. You're not going to listen to the gossip and slander that our society push. We're going to push education. We're going to push biblical principles. We're going to push things that are righteous and morally realistic and idealistic for our people to drill into the minds of the youth. That's what's going to create change. Because think about it. We tried marching. We tried voting. We tried integrating in society. We tried going to church. But not a single pastor could figure out the solutions in the Bible of how to fix this dung that we're in. You see what I'm saying? You had a comment? Go ahead.
So I just wanted to stress that I think it's important. What do I say? So, like you mentioned, the external, but the internal is important as well. And I just want to demonstrate that point in having positive self-esteem in yourself, that you don't need to seek that type of attention. Or even I think the father, when he made his commentary about her reason for wanting to travel to Houston from California, so and going to find a work at a strip club, because I guess it wasn't a secret or anything like that. People in her circle knew that to go she wanted to go work at a strip club. And so, I think a conversation with the father, with the reporter, and he's like, I guess she wanted to make some money. And so there's other ways you can make money. You know what I mean? People have online businesses. There are lots of ways that you can um, make money online without putting yourself in harm's way. It's just that so many people who do not have your best interests at heart are in that industry of sex work. I know there's a lot of talk about sex positive and body positivity and things like that. But we want to keep all people safe and not mix up with people who have, not your best, not only not have your best interests at heart, but their intentions are to harm. Look at the things this guy was looking up. He had no intentions of paying her, but he used that to lure her. And so, while on exterior she appeared to be a pretty girl, but internally there's something that she's seeking. You know what I mean? And so I'm just curious about that internal confliction that someone may have within themselves. And so that's why self-awareness and self-positivity is really important, as well as being protected on the outside. So I want to share that point.
And that's an excellent point. I'm very glad that you mentioned that. Excellent point. If the father and other relatives would have gave her that self-esteem to view herself on a higher level, to view herself through godly principles, to view herself as a princess of the Most High and not as someone that can just use her body for, these different things that we see going on, and this
Right.
goes all back to what we read about America in itself. So now, the level of prostitution that occurs here has been going on for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And this is not the first instance where violence occurred as it relates to strip clubs, nightclubs, and other places that promote debauchery and these things. The confines of marriage, the confines of marriage is where sexual acts should take place. Unfortunately, we live in a society that does not embrace biblical based principles. But in finding out who you are, knowing that you're not Black, you're not Native American, you're not a Negro, you are special and unique to the Creator, it's time for us to return back to biblical based principles to restore the decayed estate of our people. So now, with that being said, Jen, we have a last article to go over. It is the article of the officer that was charged with the fatal murder of Patrick Lyoya. If you would, please
Yes.
go over that article.
Yes, and so with this update in the Patrick Lyoya, the original incident, just to briefly inform the listeners, on April 4th, Patrick Lyoya, who was 26, he's a refugee from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, was fatally shot in the back of the head by Officer Christopher Scher in Grand Rapids Police Department during a scuffle. Um, During a scuffle in the traffic stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So the update here is that Christopher Scher, Officer Christopher Scher, has charged with second-degree murder in the fatal shooting of Patrick Lyoya during the traffic stop, and he has been fired. He was terminated after waiving his right to a discharge hearing, according to the Grand Rapids city manager. His termination was effective June 10th. And let's see, the termination comes 2 months after fatally shooting Lyoya, and he was pulled over for an unregistered license plate.
So now, this is the face of the domestic terrorism. This is the face of the murderer. Okay? Remember this face, because a lot of times, as soon as a Black man commits a crime, it is portrayed and plastered all over the news. So I'm going to do the same. Whenever you see an act that is egregious, you have to expose the group of people that are doing these things. Yes, I'm making it about that because this man literally shot a person execution style in the back of the head. Was he doing something crazy to the man to shoot him? No. A license plate. A freaking license plate. Last time I checked, a license plate or a traffic violation does not give you the authority as a race soldier to murder someone. It does not give you the authority to use weapons to kill, torture, and maim innocent individuals. Remember, it is innocent until proven guilty. That man that was killed and murdered by this officer, Christopher Schur, was innocent. There was no jury to convict him of a crime. There was no judge to put out a warrant. This individual by the name of Christopher Schur used his so-called authority as a public servant, as a public employee, as a government agent to use his authority and racism to shoot a man in the back of the head. Let's make it what it is. The Bible says that the children of Esau have a perpetual hatred against the children of Israel. The Bible is a true book. The Bible says that when the Caucasian races came into power, evils were multiplied on the earth. So they created the weapons, passed the laws to say you have the alleged right to bear arms, but that don't apply to black folks. You see, if we treated others how they treat us, then you know that we would wipe them off the face of the earth. But since we have such a loving heart, we love others more than we love ourselves, we still have an affinity towards our oppressor. He's not going to assassinate me. No, his job is to protect and serve. But guess what? He's not protecting you from harm, and he's not serving you a sandwich. He wants to kill you. And he will use any excuse, whether trivial, minuscule, small, trivial, to assassinate you and shoot you in the back of the head. This is the face of the border of wickedness. This is the face of Antichrist. This is the face of anti-Messiah. Because guess what? The Bible is a true book. Let's verify this information with the Bible. We're going to go to the book of Psalms, chapter 10, and prove using the Bible that the Bible talks about how these individuals murder the innocent. Let's go to the Bible verse real quick. We're going to open up the tab and we're going to go to Psalms chapter 10. See, what we like to do on the Forefront Radio is correlate biblical prophecy with history and current events. We make the Bible come alive at the Forefront Radio. It is not a fairy tale book. This is a book of history and prophecy as it relates to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so let's read the book of Psalms. So it says this: Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thyself in times of trouble? This is a prayer that many of us wonder. We ask to ourselves, why is God allowing these atrocities, these evils? Why did slavery happen to us and God didn't do anything about it? Why were we taken and brought to this so-called newfound land and everyone else had freedom against this society except us? The Chinese came and had freedom. The Arabs came and had freedom. The Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish. But when it comes to blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, We suffered the most atrocities of them all. Of them all. So we're making this prayer and we're asking the Most High, God, why are you standing afar off looking at this? The wicked, verse 2, the wicked in his pride does persecute the poor. So now consider what we read in Malachi. Let's go back to Malachi. Let's go back to Malachi because I know some people have forgot the thought already. Let's go to Malachi chapter 1, verse 4. And we got to prove the Bible with the Bible. Who is the wicked according to the Bible? The Bible says in Malachi chapter 1, verse 4, whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord has indignation with forever. So now we know that the wicked in the book of Psalms is referring to the people groups and the people that have the same attributes of Esau. And what is it that Esau does? Let's read Psalms chapter 10, verse 2. The wicked in his pride does persecute the poor. So now, Jen, I wanted to ask you a question, sis. Who are the people groups that suffer poverty on the earth today? Who is it that lives in the ghettos, the slums? Who are these people?
So for the majority, it's people of color, the Black and indigenous people.
Exactly. For Black people, we're in what's called ghettos. And what's interesting is if you Google search the definition of ghetto, it says a place where the Jews resort. That's something for you to look into. Why is the ghetto called a place where the Jews live? Okay. So the majority of people on the earth, whether in developed nations or in underdeveloped nations, are Black people, Hispanic people, Native Americans, and other indigenous populations. Let's look at America, for example. Who are the ones that live on reservations? So-called Indians, right?
Or native.
Natives, right? Thank you.
Yes.
When you look at what we call barrios, these are the Spanish terms for the ghettos where Hispanic people live, like Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, Mexicans, right? Then you have the ghettos, the slums, the projects, where so-called African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and other populaces of people live. These are the poor of the earth. These are the meek of the earth. So now, I'm not too sure if you're familiar with the Bible, but do you remember, Jen, the verse in the Bible where Jesus said, blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the
Inherit
earth?
the earth. Yes.
Guess what?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you a secret. God was talking to us. We are the poor. We are the poor in spirit. It doesn't matter if you have $1 million. It doesn't even matter if you're Oprah Winfrey. Our people are the poor of spirit. Why? Because we don't know our identity. We don't know our spirit, our language, our culture, our way of life. Think about it. I'll use the Native Americans for example, right? And indigenous populations. They were taken and put in reservations. Their children were taken and put into boarding schools. And the ideology behind the European nations was to kill the Indian and quote unquote save the man. That was their thought process. So what did they do? They destroyed their spirit. During slavery, we could read or write prior to that. We had our own language, our own customs. Many of the slaves, you could actually look this up. There's a website called slavevoyages.org,
Mhm.
provided by either Yale or Harvard University. They literally have slave shipping manifestos where on the shipping list, Black people's names were listed as Hebrew and Spanish and Portuguese names. Meaning what? Many of the slaves were and are the Hebrews of the Bible. Names like Jeremiah, names like Nehemiah, names like Buya, Kuya, Kubala, Anyala, Daniala, names that were Portuguese of nature, names also that were Spanish, such as Anthony, Morisco, Suarez. Okay, these people are the poor of the earth. So now going back to the verse, it says the wicked. So now we're getting a context now of historical figures. The wicked, referring to Edom, in his pride does persecute the poor. The poor is in reference to the nation of Israel. So one may say, well, Forefront Radio, give me some more to back it up, because that may not be the case. That may just be speculation. Do you have a specific Bible verse that you could show me, showing and proving that Esau is against Jacob, that Esau is against Israel? Yes, I do. Let's find it in Ezekiel chapter 35. All right, Ezekiel chapter 35. Let's take a glance at this. It says, Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. Mount Seir is the regions that the Caucasian races lived prior to leaving and going into conquering the Greco-Roman regions of the Mediterranean Sea and going into Europe. Okay, this is where they lived prior to living in the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, so God says, prophesy against it. Watch this. It says, and say unto it, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee. I will make thee most desolate, and will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. And God is saying that I'm going to destroy the nation of Edom, and I'm going to explain why. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred. What's that word? A perpetual hatred. That means forever. Just like the story we just read, because think about it. You have to have a deep sense of hatred in your internal core in order for you to be a police officer who has been thoroughly trained on public safety,
Mm.
on protecting people in cases of emergency, and CPR. They know how to conduct emergency medical services if someone is having a stroke, a heart attack, they're choking on something. And even if they're in a fire, they know how to go in and protect people from harm. That's their job. But because they have a perpetual hatred, they go and do similar acts like George Floyd, Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin. The recent thing that happened just last month, where a Caucasian man wrote, "Here's your reparations," on an
Mm.
assault rifle and shot down innocent Black people.
Mhm.
So God is saying, because you have a perpetual hatred and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword. You see that? So now, in today's time, the equivalent of the sword is what? What do we use today as a weapon?
The firearm?
Ding, 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 ding. That's why I love doing shows with you, sis. You're one of the most smartest, intelligent women on the planet here. Okay? From a firearm. So the sword is the firearm that they use, their weapons of war. And it's not just firearms, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
bombs, drones, all these different things that the wicked has created, the antagonist of this movie script. All I'm doing today is showing you what the movie script is showing. We call it history, the Bible calls it prophecy. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force, meaning military force, right? So name a military force that is held by state governments. What are they called today? It starts with a P.
Oh, so the police?
The police force.
Right.
The police force. You see that? So it says by the police force of the sword. So the police force uses weapons like firearms in
Mm-hmm.
the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So our iniquity had an end, meaning God decided to forgive us for breaking the covenant through Jesus Christ the Messiah. And when we were set free globally, and they said, no longer will we enslave you. Your emancipation from slavery was 1865. And then throughout the earth, freedom movements were going on where they set the captives free. So our iniquity now is at an end, but sin still exists. Evil still exists. And the wicked are still plotting against the poor. Watch this. So God says, look, I'm not going to let you just kill my kids. I'm not going to let you just do whatever the hell you want. There's going to be a recompense. I will reward everyone according to their own actions. Verse 6. Therefore, as I live, you see, this is another way how you know that God is a black man. Because he say, on my life. This is how black people talk. He says, on my life, as I live, saith the Lord, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Think about it. He's saying now, since the Edomites don't hate blood, right? They don't hate the fact that they, as Christians, went and hung and lynched black people. As Christians, church events were held where they literally said, come on down to the church. There's a lynching about to happen. We're about to have a picnic, meaning pick a Negro that they wanted to kill. They were people that jumped on trains and traveled to distant areas just to witness a public execution of a black person. And now they say, well, we can't do it openly nowadays. So let's kind of sprinkle some of the slave catchers. Let's let them do it now. Let's let the police force do it now. And God is saying, since you don't hate blood, blood is going to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Blood is going to come to them. This is why you see that situations are transpiring overseas, such as Ukraine, such as Russia, where blood is pursuing after them. This is going to happen again. Other examples of that was World War I, where they were killing one another. World War II, where they were killing one another. And guess what? World War III is something many people all over are speculating about today. So get ready for it. It's going to come, whether we like it or not. Okay. God is saying, this is not the Forefront Radio saying, God is saying blood is going to pursue Esau for the evils that they've done. Let's go back to the article briefly. and we'll finish touching on the article of the
Mhm.
thing, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay, so let's go back to the article and show you the level of insanity that happened with this man. This is the face of the wicked. Let's go on and touch upon this thing. It says, okay, so we know that this officer was charged with the murder in the fatal shooting of Patrick Viola, and he has been fired.
Mhm.
Amen. Hallelujah. Should have been fired a long time ago. So then it says Christopher Scher was terminated after waiving his right to a discharge hearing. Grand Rapids City Manager Mark Washington said in a statement the termination was effective June the 10th. So this was about 8 days ago. Then it says the Grand Rapids Police Department chief and the city's labor relations office had recommended Scher's termination, Washington said. Due to the ongoing criminal matter and the potential for civil litigation, yes, you're damn right there should be civil litigation.
Mhm.
His parents should sue the entire city, let alone the state. They killed this young man execution style.
Yeah, and I guess I want to share that a lot of people, even including a lot of Black people, are sympathetic to this officer because of that struggle that he had, and I guess there was a lack of backup. I'm not sure where the backup was, or did he not call for them, or why he was out there by himself. Which I mean, really, it shouldn't have escalated to this matter, but I guess once he got out and the scuffle struggle ensued, it kind of got out of control for him. But for him to think that the proper response is to, okay, I'm shooting in the back of the head. You know what I mean? Like, why? Why was that the proper response, or why was that the response that that in his mind that was the only way to alleviate, as they say, the threat?
And
And I
that's
think.
interesting you say
Mhm.
that because think about this. Aren't they trained to not engage a suspect by themselves? Aren't they trained to call backup?
Right. And so I just wonder, especially when he saw that he was getting out of the car, you know. So yeah, but I see that a lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
sympathetic to him, and I just wonder how this is going, what the
Mm-hmm.
outcome is going to be because of that. And I feel like they may feel that he's justified, even though we know better than that. But
Mm-hmm.
because he's out
Mm-hmm.
there by himself with the scuffle, and he was trying to, resolve it, but that was not
Mm-hmm.
the correct response.
Of course. But think about it, Jen. Don't they have tasers, batons? They have different means of how to subdue an assailant. Because
Right.
remember, this wasn't a situation where there was any, this wasn't like a domestic abuse call where there was
No.
violence going on. There
No.
was no reports of him having a knife or anything like that. Because I remember having a discussion with this person that was actually from the continent of Africa, right? I don't
Okay.
think he was from the Congo. I think he was from like either Nigeria or Ghana, right? And he told me the relationship that they have with the police is a lot different than how we have in the Americas.
Yeah.
So remember, this young man was from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was a native of this region, right? And what this person told me was a lot of times what they do is they'll go out and just have a simple conversation with the police officer and talk about what's going on. So when you read this story, you find that's what happened. The man went out to go talk to the police officer, which is what they normally do in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They don't perceive
Right.
police officers as a threat, and rightfully so. The police, their job is to be
Yeah.
a public servant. You don't think that this is what's going to happen. I might end up losing my life, which is why.
Right. Right.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something? Go ahead.
No, I was saying I think there was a, like, he didn't understand that the officer was heightened in excitement and, perceiving him as a threat. And so I think he kind of responded in fear with, the scuffle initiating and things like that.
I agree with you. Do you think if the officer, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that question. Do you think it's important for us as people of the Black diaspora to help and inform Black immigrants on how to deal with these things? Because I think a lot of times, even in our culture, there's a divide between so-called Black immigrants and African Americans, because we know about these things.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
That's a good point that you bring that up because, oh God, that was almost in the 90s. I'm thinking of that case. Amadou Diallo reaching for the
Oh,
wallet,
yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
and that had to be, he's thinking in his mind, I'm just going to reach for my wallet, and that they took him out because he's making a move and it's a threat. And, that's where the officer's mind is. This is a threat. I got to, he's reaching for something. What is he reaching for? So, yeah, obviously there's a disconnect with our culturally, there is a disconnect.
So I think definitely if we can inform some of the Black immigrants when they come here that, hey, these folks here have a perpetual hatred, just like the Bible says. They don't like us. You want to make sure that if you deal with them, make sure you keep it professional. Don't, and that's it. Remove yourself as far away from them as possible, because any incident can lead to you end up losing your life. And then we have not just tens, but we have hundreds, thousands of examples of
Hmm.
situations that happened. you
Yeah.
know eh, so it's not that it's hidden anymore. I think one of the best things was the invention of the camera, because now you can document these
Oh, yeah.
occurrences, and it's not just written on paper with witness testimony, so they're being exposed you know
Yes. Yeah, even like the ones that try to turn it off and things like that, they're
hmm
catching them
hmm
doing that. You know what I mean? Like this should
hmm
have been if they could have created that years ago. Oh my goodness. But yeah.
hmm So, just finishing off in the article, it says that the body worn camera footage of the traffic stop released by the police showed Sher was struggling, and
Hmm.
allegedly he was screaming, "Stop resisting, let go," blah 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 blah. Right. This is what they always do, though. When they know that they're being recorded, they start shouting out stuff just to make it seem like they're doing things. But remember, this guy was shot in the back of the head,
Yeah.
which means he already was not facing the individual, so the threat was done. The moment his face is not facing you and you're able to subdue him, when you shoot that person in the back of the head, that is first degree and not second degree. Okay.
Mm.
That is so they're giving him low level things. First degree should be what they charge this man with, because he's been working as a veteran for over 7 years.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's been thoroughly trained. Okay, so what are your closing remarks or thoughts on the episode? I think this was a really good show and a really good talk in regards to some of the things that's going on. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to come on and go over these topics with you. Starting off with that shooting, how many mass shootings are we going to see? A very disheartening way to end this week. A lot of people are looking forward to a nice long weekend. And for it to end with that shooting in the church was very sad to hear.
Definitely, definitely. Could you provide me with your website so we can go ahead and add it on the stream?
Yes, it is www.wokebyaccident.net.
All right, I'll type it in the comment section. Those of you that have been watching, I really appreciate you tuning in. You go to
Yes.
wokebyaccident.net. So tell us about your show as far as what new events do you have planned and scheduled?
Yes, and so on Walk by Accident podcast, we have new episodes every Thursday, and we have started doing visual episodes. So we're streaming on all the major platforms as well as YouTube for visual episodes. My most recent episode dropped this past Thursday and had a Black inventor on, Brian Will Turner, who created a device called the Pocket USA, which is actually created to prevent negative police occurrences in these traffic stops that we were kind of talking about. And so the device he created is for a driver to put their documents and attach it to the outside of their either window or door so that there is less contact and interaction with the police when you're pulled over for a minor traffic stop so that it doesn't escalate in some of these cases like we talked about.
Phenomenal,
Mhm.
phenomenal. And do you have any other things planned as far as future events that you could talk about?
So, and just thank you to the people listening and watching. So, just looking at the comments, so we appreciate the support and watching the episode today. But yeah, so we have episodes every Wednesday. Yep, and we have visual episodes in addition to the audio episodes. Doing some recording over the weekend, so just getting some more content for you guys. So yeah, there is a local case out of St. Louis that I'm trying to get in touch with a gentleman to talk about that, where a young lady, young girl, 13-year-old girl is missing. I'm hoping that there's been a positive update because actually people have been walking up and down the streets trying to find her. Young lady, Ariana Waters in St. Louis, Missouri. And so saw his TikTok video, this gentleman, and made contact with him also on social media. So hoping to have a conversation with him to spread the word. I've been sharing it on my social stories and things like that. So just want to, do more of that kind of content.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. We appreciate you joining on the Forefront Radio as always. Thank you for participating, and peace and blessings to you all. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Woke by Accident as well as the Forefront Radio. Hey, my friend, you have just listened to the Forefront Radio. Please leave your comment and input about the show, what you like about the show, as well as any general feedback on ways to improve. We need your help to acquire new equipment to implement studio quality video and audio to our friends. Contribute as little as $4.99. It's only worth a cup of coffee. Then we can produce documentaries, more episodes, and great info for the diaspora. Go to Cash App and enter APHIELLEVI to donate to the Forefront Radio to cover our advertising costs and reach more people. Catch our next episode on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Anchor.fm/The Forefront. Always remember, the truth shall liberate the mind. Peace to the heirs of promise and the heritage of the scattered 12 tribes. Hey, my friend, you have just listened to the Forefront Radio. Please leave your comment and input about the show, what you like about the show, as well as any general feedback on ways to improve. We need your help to acquire new equipment to implement studio quality video and audio to our friends. Contribute as little as $4.99. It's only worth a cup of coffee. Then we can produce documentaries, more episodes, and great info for the diaspora. Go to Cash App. Hey, my friend, you have just listened to The Forefront Radio. Please leave your comment and input about the show, what you like about the show, as well as any general feedback on ways to improve. We need your help to acquire new equipment to implement studio quality video and audio to our friends. Contribute as little as $4.99. It's only worth a cup of coffee. Then we can produce documentaries, more episodes, and great info for the diaspora. Go to Cash App and enter APHIELLEVI to donate to the Forefront Radio to cover our advertising costs and reach more people. Catch our next episode on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Anchor.fm/The Forefront. Always remember, the truth shall liberate the mind. Peace to the heirs of promise and the heritage of the scattered 12 tribes.